Well, hello there and welcome to the Richie Allen Television Show in association with davidike.com and BVTV. Hope you're well. Hope you've had a good week since I last saw you. This is episode 11. We're pretty thrilled about that. It's the last one for about 3 weeks. The next one will be on September the 4th, I think, which will be Friday, September the 4th. So what it means is it's kind of the end of season 1. We like to use grandiose terms like that, season 1. It's been good making the programme. Thanks again to Hayden, Marty and BVTV for making it, and for davidike.com for putting it out there at the weekends. We're going to talk about a lot this week. We'll talk about Ed Heath, Ed Heath? Sounds like I knew him. Former Prime Minister Edward Heath. We'll talk about him and allegations that have surfaced about him. We'll talk about Syria. We'll talk about Libya. There's a lot to talk about. We'll talk about Monsanto as well. And we'll even talk about the mainstream media in the guise or in the form of a guy called Ian Dale, who presents sometimes a drive time show and sometimes an early morning radio show for LBC, which used to be London's biggest conversation. They've now changed it to Leading Britain's Conversation. They've relaunched themselves as a national talk news channel. They're fucking awful. But I'll get to that a bit later on. There's a good reason for why I'm saying that. You know where I'm going to start today? I'm going to start with Jeremy Corbyn again, because I've talked a lot about Corbyn on the radio show, and I think you're probably sick of me, even on the TV show, bringing him up. He is taking part in the Labour leadership contest, which has taken a long time, really. It's taken a long time. He's one of 4 or 5 candidates, doesn't matter who they are, I'm not going to name them, running for leader of the Labour Party. He seems to be interesting. He says he's very much against austerity. We know that back in 2003 he strongly voted against the Iraq War. We also know that when Blair was giving evidence to the Chilcot inquiry, we know that Corbyn was working for Russia Today, and he was very, very seriously condemning what Blair was telling Chilcot. So he's an interesting guy. This week he spoke to BBC Newsnight, which is a big flagship news programme for BBC, which 10:30, 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the evening, 10 o'clock, 10:30, whichever it is. It's probably 10:30 after the news. Might even be 11 o'clock. Doesn't matter. He was asked a question this week about Tony Blair and war crimes. Have a look.
Some of your supporters feel passionately that Tony Blair should be tried for war crimes. Do you?
Chilcot report's going to come out sometime. I hope it comes out soon. I think there are some decisions that Tony Blair has got to confess or tell us what actually happened. What happened in Crawford, Texas in 2002 in his private meetings with George Bush? Why has the Chilcot report still not come out? Because apparently there's still debate about the release of information on one side or the other of the Atlantic. And at that point, Tony Blair and the others that have made the decisions are then going to have to deal with the consequences of it.
So should he be tried for war crimes?
If he's committed a war crime, yes. Everybody who's committed a war crime should be. I think it was an illegal war. I'm confident about that. Indeed, Kofi Annan confirmed it was an illegal war, and therefore he has to explain to that. Is he going to be tried for it? I don't know. Could he be tried for it? Possibly. But
you would like to see him tried for war crimes?
I want to see all those that committed war crimes tried for it, and those that made the decisions that went with it.
Yeah, look, that was Newsnight, Jeremy Corbyn this week on the BBC. I could now go into a long-winded rant about Tony Blair and detail one by one the war crimes committed by Blair. None of it conjecture. He committed serious war crimes. But I'm not going to do that. Well, at least not yet anyway. There are a couple of things I want to show you. Reg Keys is a terrific guy. He's a really lovely human being. I've been lucky enough over the years to interview Reg, and I could have grabbed a soundbite from any one of a number of interviews I've done with Reg. Reg's son Tom was killed unlawfully in Iraq in the very early days of the war. They were basically abandoned by their battalion. They had no proper equipment. They didn't have desert boots. They didn't have the proper rifles. They didn't have enough ammunition, and they were killed. They were under-equipped and led to their deaths on a pack of lies. But you can hear from Reg himself. Again, the BBC. This is Reg, I think, on the big questions with Nicky Campbell. Don't get me started on Nicky Campbell. But this is Reg talking about why he believes Tony Blair committed war crimes.
Well, I followed this ever since Tom's death, which was in June 2003. And at the start of finding all the facts that led to Tom's death, I actually accepted it. That's the risk a soldier takes. He may well die in war. I fully accept that. But as it began to unfold, how he knowingly misled Parliament, how he led our forces into combat very ill-equipped, no desert boots for some of the lads, not enough equipment, lacking in body armour, biological suits were not sufficient. Remember, that first onslaught of troops, my son was one of those in Optelic 1, thought they were going to face the onslaught of WMD. Now, Tony Blair misled Parliament. He stood at the dispatch box, remember February 2003, and said Tony Blair can stay in power if he hands over his weapons of mass destruction.
Saddam Hussein can stay in power.
But he didn't want him to hand them over because this war was already on fast track. Now, he misled Parliament, he misled you and I, the people of this country, he misled those troops, and that is an offence, and it has cost over 100,000.
It's unimaginable even to us what happened to Reg Keys and his family. And of course there are hundreds and hundreds of other families whose children never came home, whose sons, and in some cases daughters, never came back from Iraq or Afghanistan. Reg is a great guy, like I said. He stood against Tony Blair in the Sedgefield constituency. I suppose, Hayden, my memory is not great, but it would have had to be the election in 2005, I suppose. It would be 2005, it would be.
Yes.
Elections every 5 years, it would have been 05. Blair didn't even shake his hand, did he? He wouldn't even look him in the eye when they were tallying up the votes at the end, and they were announcing that Blair had retained his seat.
Tony Blair not being a decent human being, I don't believe.
No, you don't believe me, yeah. But it's absolutely true. Tony Benn, another great guy, and again somebody who stood out strongly against the Iraq War and many other wars. Rest in peace, Tony Benn, a humanitarian and a human rights activist and a wonderful, wonderful man. Anybody who's ever interviewed Tony, I interviewed him some years back, will tell you he could be a bit grumpy, but who couldn't, in light of what he was dealing with and who he was dealing with. Tony, before he died, was interviewed on RT, and he was under no illusion whatsoever as to what should happen to Tony Blair.
Well, what he did was to commit a war crime. There's no question about that. That was a war crime. I think what happened was he gave a private assurance to Bush that if Bush wanted to attack Iraq, he would support him. And I think that may have influenced Bush to go to war, because he thought, at least I'll have Britain on my side. And if it was a war crime, then clearly he could be sent to The Hague.
What do you want to happen?
Well, I think it's important that we apply the laws to ourselves that we think should be applied to others, and we just have to see what happened. But there's been a long delay in producing the report on the Iraq War, and when that comes out, we shall be in a better position to judge how...
Do you think any of us will be alive when the Chilcot report comes out? I mean, they said it would come out last year.
I know, I think it will have to come out, and I think anyway the facts are so well known that even if Chilcot doesn't come out, people know quite well what really happened.
Well, it's a great point, of course, Tony Benn made about the Chilcot report. Will we be alive when it comes out? He makes a great point also when he says that we know what happened. Whatever Sir John Chilcot and the team of lawyers working with him have published. Well, they haven't published it yet, but they finalised it. Whenever we read it, we don't need to hear from John Chilcot to know what Tony Blair did. I believe the real reason the report is taking forever to come out is possibly because Chilcot has been asked to amend it. In other words, to be less critical of Tony Blair and Blair's cabinet colleagues in the run-up to the Iraq War. What proof do you have of that, Rich? I have none. I have none whatsoever. But I do believe that they're being asked to amend it and to soften it a bit because the sick bastards are doing it now. We've been bombing targets in Syria and in Iraq since September of last year. RAF pilots embedded with US Air Force pilots there, even though we weren't being told that, even though the Defence Secretary of this country, Michael Fallon, was lying to Parliament and telling them, oh, of course, we'll have to come back to get parliamentary approval for strikes on Islamic State. The fucking bastards are doing it today. So they're committing war crimes today because when you're dropping bombs on these places, you're killing people. And as I talk to you today, Hayden Hewitt, I believe it's the 70th anniversary of dropping the big motherfucking bomb on Nagasaki.
I do believe you're right.
It is. Another war crime, by the way. Killing 150,000 Japanese men, women and children. Not soldiers. Industrial workers in and around Nagasaki. We're doing it now. So they must temper any criticism of Blair in Chilcot. That's my guess anyway. Because Cameron is Blair Part 2, isn't he? Thatcher Part 3, whatever you want to call him. On Chilcot, Cameron wants us to believe that he wants a definite timetable for publication. Cameron wants you to believe that he's just as pissed off as you and I that Chilcot hasn't reported. I want a timetable, he says, as you can see here. But he doesn't. He doesn't. Because as you and I talk today, dear viewer, David Cameron is committing war crimes. Because we're bombing inside the borders of sovereign countries, claiming to be tackling terrorists who might come and do bad things here in England. Do you know what we're really doing? Do you know what we're really doing? We're bombing the fucking piss out of men, women and children. That's what we're doing. Real men, real women and real children. And what's the result of it? When you do that, when you use these weapons loaded with depleted uranium, what is the result of that? Have a look at this.
Barely able to breathe, yet Fatima Ahmed spoke for a city. Sky News told the story of the baby born with 2 heads in May last year. Her mother Shakria pleaded for help. Why was her child one of an increasing number born with deformities since the war like this? 15 months on, we went back to see what had happened to Fatima. We discovered the little girl had died before reaching her 4th birthday.
نومتها عادي كل شيء ما بيها. قلت لك للساعة 11 بالليل قعدت لقيتها الشاخط. يعني حيل بس ما تقول لي ماما اقعدي راح اموت. قعدت عليها رأسا أنا أخذتها حطيتها بحضني. انتهت حياتها بعد ما لحد ما حاطها بحضني طبطبت لها مدري شنو من هذا فهو عرفها أكثر من عندي رأسا من لزمها بإيده قال لي عوضك على الله.
Shakria Ahmed was not alone in her frustration. We also met the family of Tiba Afdan, born with a massive growth which was rapidly spreading across the little girl's face. It's been an uphill struggle, but for Tiba things are getting better. Her parents used all the money they had and with the help of family and friends took her to neighbouring Jordan to be operated on.
المرة الأولى يعني كانت كثير صعبة 3 أيام على الحدود ما دخلونا يعني الحدود 3 أيام بالبرد وتمرضت على الحدود وهي مريضة ما دخلونا بعدين أرسلوا علينا مرة ثانية دخلونا مرة ثانية لا منظمة دزتها العلاج فكانت شوية أسهل علاجهم يعني الحمد لله زين.
That looked like real journalism by Sky News, but the truth is, at the time, they had no choice but to cover it. Because I was interviewing Robert Fisk of The Independent at the time that Sky put that report out, and Fisk had written a series of brilliant articles in The Independent all about what happened to those babies. Look at those babies. Imagine it. Imagine young women realising that, well, we best not conceive. We best not have children because look what happened to the woman across the street. Just think about that for a minute. Fisk wrote some amazing articles on it. They're available on independent.co.uk. You need only put in Robert Fisk, Fallujah babies, and you will find out what we did to those people. Nobody's ever been charged with that. Nobody. Nobody has ever been asked to account for those children. And that's still going on today. And it will go on in Syria. It will go on in Iraq. It will go on in Libya. What do you think NATO were using carpet bombing Libya in 2011? Depleted uranium munitions. Well, we see it in the next few years. Children being born with deformities. Nobody accountable for it. Tony Blair should be in prison for the rest of his life. It's as simple as that. Not just him, of course, but others. There was a brilliant report on RT this week, which I think perfectly illustrates what I've been saying on the television show and on the radio show for a long time now, that there's been a long-term plan to render the Middle East uninhabitable through destroying the infrastructure which we've gotten into on the programme, killing millions of people, poisoning the land, as we saw earlier with Fallujah, and so on. And this is what journalism is supposed to look at. Watch this.
New videos emerged purportedly showing the abusive interrogation of one of the sons of the ousted Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi by prison guards in Tripoli. The man believed to be shown in the video is Saadi Gaddafi, the third son of the deposed colonel. During the coup in 2011, he commanded the Libyan special forces that protected his father's government. After the war was lost, he fled to Niger, but was eventually captured and extradited back to Libya last year. His lawyer believes the video does show her client.
Lizzie Taylor, who worked for Russia Today in the region, sums up perfectly what has been done to Libya since the CIA-sponsored so-called uprising in that country. Lizzie Taylor, have a look.
Many would see goes back to that NATO war in 2011, like when militias like the one running this prison were armed and financed by NATO as the good guys, essentially, to get rid of the former leader Muammar Gaddafi. But I was there on the ground at the time, and even back then in Tripoli, there were thousands of people who were coming to the city, perhaps ironically not escaping from Muammar Gaddafi, but escaping from these militias and fleeing to Gaddafi strongholds. It was clear back then, and it's become clear every day in the 4 years since then, for example, with this latest video, that the effect of the West's war has been to plunge a relatively stable and prosperous country into endlessness, conflict, lawlessness, and chaos.
Right, so never-ending picture of chaos. Somebody remarkably resembling me has been saying that on this programme and on the radio programme for months. And in fact, in my own career, going back several years. She mentioned people coming up to journalists in Libya, in Tripoli and elsewhere, that supporting the United States have been supporting the good guys that turn out to be the bad guys. People fleeing murder and mayhem and telling journalists that it's not the dictators or the dictator's army who was killing them, but the Western-backed militias. Over and over again. The same fucking story being played out over and over again with different characters. And I have to do this again. I'm sorry. Look at this.
Once you got to Iraq and took it over and took down Saddam Hussein's government, then what are you going to put in its place? That's a very volatile part of the world, and if you take down the central government in Iraq, you can easily end up seeing pieces of Iraq fly off. Part of it the Syrians would like to have to the west. Part of eastern Iraq, the Iranians would like to claim, fought over for 8 years. In the north, you've got the Kurds, and if the Kurds spin loose and join with the Kurds in Turkey, then you threaten the territorial integrity of Turkey. It's a quagmire.
Quagmire indeed, eh? Dick Cheney 21 years ago. You know, it's like deja vu all over again. What did Cheney say? Arming people, madness at the time, deposing dictators, factions growing up, opposing sides, chaos, carnage, all of that. Ashton Carter is the US Defence Secretary. This was him a few days ago. Again, RT with the clip. Look at Ashton Carter.
We won't get into the specifics of our rules of engagement, but we have said all along that we would take the steps necessary to ensure that these forces could successfully carry out their mission.
However, America has never kept its attitude towards what it wants in Syria secret.
The regime of Bashar al-Assad must come to an end.
Assad has to go.
It's time for Assad to get out of the way.
It is time for Bashar to go.
Washington has a long history of supporting what it brands a moderate Syrian opposition, but just over a month ago, a Pentagon chief admitted it was a struggle to find trustworthy recruits for U.S. programs.
We're trying to recruit and identify people that, as you put it, can be counted on to have the right mindset and ideology, not be aligned with groups like ISIL. It turns out to be very hard to identify people who meet both of those criteria.
Ashton Carter paints a hilarious fucking picture, doesn't he? Can you imagine the conversation he's been describing there? Hey, Akmel, how are you, kid? Now, if I give you this M60 and this lovely new Toyota truck and all of this ammo, do you promise that you'll just kill who we say? Do you promise now, Akmel? You won't go beheading people in the desert for no reason. Raping men, women and children. Getting children to execute people. Do you promise now you won't do that if I give you all of these toys? Good man. Here's the lollipop. Run along and go fucking killing. Right. That's not an exaggeration, by the way, because that's what they want you to believe. You know, we have to take better care about who we give these weapons to. You heard Obama this week? If the Syrian government is firing upon the Syrian rebels, well, we'll have to fire upon the Syrian government. Not a whisper of condemnation of that statement in the Western media at all. It's madness, so I'm going to say no more about it. Why labour the point? We're going to take a very quick break. Just before we do, a reminder, you're watching the Richie Allen Television Show in association with DavidIke.com and BV TV. We'll be back in about 2 minutes' time.
This man owns a small business. He works hard in his business. He spends his days dealing with customers, suppliers, and general aggravation. He certainly doesn't want to spend his days dealing with the VAT man as well. After all that, you'll often find him at evenings and weekends working on his books. Or not. Sound familiar? With the high levels of compliance and the severe penalties for getting it wrong, wouldn't it be better if someone else could find any problems before the taxman does? You've got better things to do with your time than worry about your books. Think of all the other things you could be doing instead of crunching numbers. Just put all your paperwork into a box and let Accounts Direct take care of everything. Bookkeeping, management, accounts, tax returns, VAT returns, payroll and more. Accounts Direct. Accountants on your side.
Hi guys, I'm Chris. We're here at BBTV. We're getting set up for our new show, Nerdgasm. Nerdgasm is going to be a show all about films, TV, comics, games, tech, all the good stuff. We're going to deal in rumours, we're going to get news, we're going to get reviews. We are currently looking for at least one more host. If you're interested in getting involved, please go to www.beyondvision.tv. Everything's on there. And please don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. Which will keep you abreast with everything going on here at BBTV. And yeah, that's about it. I don't know how to finish it.
And you're very welcome back. Remember, I present a radio programme Monday to Thursday on RichieAllenShow.com. It goes out on Fab Radio, Talk Radio Europe, and on DavidIke.com. Do check out DavidIke.com/headlines, your one-stop shop to find out what's really going on in the world. It really is great. And I mention this every week because it's brilliant. LiveLeak.com, in the guise of Evil Marty, J, John and Hayden Hewitt, make a fantastic television programme every Thursday at 10:30 p.m. BST. It's called The Live Leak Show, and it's the most unpredictable programme I think that's ever been made. It's terrific. It's great entertainment, and there's some great discussion on there as well about many of the news stories that I talk about myself. So that's The Live Leak Show. Speaking of David Icke, David has a Facebook page with about 650,000 followers on it. Now, during my live radio show this week, I was looking at Facebook for comments from listeners. I get emails, I get tweets, but I also like to see what people are saying on Facebook. When I had to log back into my own Facebook account unexpectedly, the reason being is that I'm a moderator on David's Facebook page. I don't do anything. I don't moderate. I don't block people. I don't do anything. In fact, David's got very strict don't block people rules. I don't do anything like that at all. I basically just keep an eye on what people are saying. And Facebook showed me this picture, which is on screen now, and said that they would be removing it. And they asked me if I wanted to unpublish David Icke's page. What the fuck? They asked me, did I want to unpublish the page? I'm not an admin. I'm an editor. If you're familiar with Facebook, the people who own the pages are the admins. That's right, Hayden, isn't it? They're the admins. They can put editors on. Now, right, Marty's here as well.
There's actually a few levels.
A few levels, isn't there?
Yeah.
And you can do various things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So they actually said, what do you make of that, by the way? They asked me, did I want to unpublish the page?
I think it shows that obviously they believe people have a lot of trust in their moderators.
Madness, isn't it? Yeah, it's unbelievable. So they basically banned David for 72 hours, his page, from doing anything because of this picture, which is fair fucking comment, by the way. It's an imagined meme, an imagined conversation. It's a meme of an imagined conversation between Savile and Heath, which might have fucking taken place. How do we know? Savile was a record-breaking fucking paedophile. Heath was a child molester who children who he molested were murdered to keep them quiet. We know this. So anyway, David got banned. Needless to say, he wasn't impressed. And he had a statement on his website yesterday. I'm not laughing at what they did to him, but he put out a statement yesterday. I thought a pretty reasoned and moderate statement, considering he must have been well pissed off about it. To say that he didn't like it. Okay. This is the book published in 1999. It's called The Biggest Secret. Many followers of David Icke and many people who don't follow him have read The Biggest Secret. It was published in 1999, in which David not only named Ted Heath, Leon Britton, I'll get to Britain, and Thatcher shortly, Sir Peter Heyman and Greville Janner, David named them as rampant paedophiles. But he also said, did David Icke, that he had evidence that a global paedophile ring was operating above the law. He was fucking nuts, wasn't he? The Daily Mirror ran a story this week of Heath and allegations against Heath. So I emailed him. And when I emailed him, because I keep in close contact with the listeners of the Richie Allen radio show, many of my listeners emailed him as well, politely, to say, Dear Daily Mirror editor, thanks for putting out this story about Ed Heath, who we know was a paedophile and was complicit in the murder of children. We know this. Please, please, please mention the next time you run a story on Heath that David Icke, somebody whom you ridiculed, laughed at, mocked, humiliated his family, chased his children around when they were younger outside schools, all the nasty fucking shit that you did to the Icke family. You could at least mention, just once, that the man you denigrated and called a lunatic was writing about this in 1999. And what David Icke wasn't doing was, oh, Ted Heath was a fucking child murderer. David Icke was writing in great detail, producing evidence. We're not talking about some of the madmen who operate in conspiracy circles, who everything is a fucking conspiracy, who everything to them is because of secret governments. No. With David Icke, we're talking about a journalist who'd researched it, spent years looking into it, speaking to victims of Heath, and in his book, when Heath was alive, Janner still is alive, challenged these guys to sue him for libel. So the Daily Mirror, the least they could do is just drop his name in there once. You know what, Dave? We've said some heinous fucking shit about you over the years, haven't we? But you know what, pal? We'll give you this one, because you were on the money on this issue back in the 1990s. I've not been asked to say that. I ain't got my tongue up anybody's fucking arse. I'm saying it because it's right. It's the right thing to say at this moment in time. In all the media coverage then this week, because they've got no choice now, you see, the media, they don't want to talk about it. But they're doing it in a different way. I'll get to that in a minute. I noticed that Natalie Bennett, the leader of the Green Party, she had a disastrous general election, did Bennett, a couple of months ago. She was talking to Ian Dale. Got plenty to say about him. Ian Dale. Tell you about him in a minute. He presents breakfast at the moment, or mid-morning, for LBC. I have a feeling he's standing in for somebody. I think his regular show is Drive Time. Dale was more concerned that the police made an appeal for witnesses outside Ted Heath's former home. Have a look.
What did you make of the fact that the police officer from Wiltshire Police made the appeal yesterday standing in front of Sir Edward Heath's former home in Salisbury? Could that be seen as slightly distasteful?
I think, I mean, you do have to worry about, what we want is the police to be actually, obviously they have to manage the media, they have to deal with the media if they want attention, but there is also a matter of simply being straightforward and honest and not playing media games. And yes, I think it probably would have been better done from a straight with a police sign behind you in a studio in what you would describe as very official circumstances.
And do you think that there is going to be an issue that as soon as any famous person is now mentioned in connection with this issue, Sir Edward Heath being the latest, that people automatically rush to judgment and assume that because he's been mentioned, therefore he must be guilty? Now, until the Daily Mirror this morning, there wasn't an actual allegation against him. There clearly is now because of the Mirror. And, I mean, it is quite an incredibly detailed story that they have here. They claim Ted Heath, he was MP for Old Bexley and Sidcup at the time. In 1961, he picked up this 12-year-old boy on the A2, took him to his central London flat. We don't need to go into any more of the allegations. But, I mean, this looks a sort of credible witness, doesn't it?
It certainly does when you read through it. And I think, there is a real balance that the police have, and it's a difficult balance to strike between, these are circumstances. We know that in the past, historically, people weren't encouraged to come forward, but people were very fearful. People did come forward and were then just disbelieved.
We know why people didn't come forward, of course. We know this. They were threatened. In many cases, they were threatened by their abusers, very powerful people, will have you killed. And if you've been raped, anally, orally, beaten, humiliated, forced to wear costumes, all the fucking shit they did to these children. When somebody says, if you ever talk about it, we'll kill you, I'd believe him. So what about this guy Ian Dale then? Who is Ian Dale? A couple of years ago, this guy won an award for broadcasting, some national award. I'm a broadcaster. I'm a radio presenter. I've worked, thankfully, trained with and was trained by outstanding broadcasters in Waterford and Ireland. I worked on and produced award-winning radio programmes. Pat yourself on the back. No, I'm not. I'm not, and I've never seen myself as a fantastic broadcaster. I think I'm a good communicator. Broadcasting is a different thing. David Icke was an amazing broadcaster. Ian Dale is a fucking wanker. He's no broadcaster. Let me tell you about him. Back in 2003, he became the first openly gay Conservative election candidate. I suppose gay men and women probably, well, that's an achievement anyway. For the Conservative Party to put somebody forward to win a seat. He's since had 3 unsuccessful runs at winning a seat because he's as boring as a fucking dog's arse. He's about as electable now as Wurzel Gummidge. Listen to his radio show and you'll understand why he didn't win over the electorate in the various constituencies in which he stood. He also published something called Ian Dale's Diary, a load of fucking bollocks, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. He was a columnist for The Telegraph. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Along with people like Julia Hartley-Brewer, who also spent time on LBC. These Muppets, fucking Muppets now, keep getting safe jobs in broadcasting because it's their job to programme the nation. Or at least a tiny, tiny bit of the nation anyway. I talk to you on Thursdays. You know that, dear viewer. The programme gets put up online on Fridays. On Wednesday night, he was only at it again, Dale. He was sitting on a sofa on Sky News, I think with Patricia Hewitt, it might have been somebody else, saying that he wishes We didn't spend so much time on this historic stuff that we should care more about children who are being abused today. You fucking fraud, Dale. You fucking fraud. Let's not spend so much time on the historic stuff. Why is that, Dale? Because Tory party fucking members like you might have to start examining your conscience about what you might or might not have heard. You fucking bullshitter. As a writer, this guy wrote many books on politics, including... This is a guy now that's supposed to be an objective journalist presenting for a national fucking radio station. This is what he wrote. Amongst others, as I said to Dennis, the Margaret Thatcher book of quotations. Memories of Maggie. Past the fucking vomit bucket. Margaret Thatcher in her own words. The Margaret Thatcher book of quotations. Fuck Hayden, how did we miss that one? Right. And then, Memories of Margaret Thatcher. I might have put that one in twice. I think I did. I'm wondering, Ian Dale, a conservative stalwart like you, a guy who claimed that you were 17 when Thatcher came to power. You heard her talk in 1978 and you were moved by her. You boring fucking bastard. At 17... You should have been watching the Ramones and the Sex Pistols, you fucking twat. Not being moved by Margaret Thatcher. And when she died, Dale said she made the country great. She did. She protected fucking paedophiles. Didn't she, Ian? Didn't she? People like Leon Britton, who was present in Dolphin Square in London when a boy was murdered. The fucking Home Secretary who lost the Dixon dossier. Didn't he, Ian? Didn't she cover that up? Let's not look retrospectively. Let's help the children of today. In your extensive research, Ian Dale, for your books on Thatcher and the other books you wrote about the Tories, did any of that research throw up any dirt, I wonder? I mean, you must have known that Thatcher's old man was a notorious child abuser. You must have been. Everybody else fucking did. And we had nothing to do with the Tories. I'm not sure, you know. I have no evidence that you threw any of that stuff up in any of the research you did. I have no evidence whatsoever. I suspect you have nothing in terms of the stuff we're talking about, in terms of the paedophilia and all of that. None of that, of course. But what did you hear? You must have heard stuff. Edwina Curry heard stuff. Other former Tory ministers, cabinet members, or backbenchers, they all heard shit. So you must have heard stuff. I'd be surprised if you didn't. This is the MSM, people. Guys like Ian Dale presenting primetime programmes on national radio with his background. Objective? Are you fucking kidding me? Objective. Journalism? Journalism is a dirty word when it's used in the same sentence as fucking people like Ian Dale. Well, you're no better, Richie. I'll tell you what. When I presented and produced programmes for WLR in Waterford in Ireland, and when I did it elsewhere, I never have been allowed go on press preview programmes and express opinions. We had to maintain objectivity at all times. We could not express an opinion on the programmes we made or we presented. You do it today. Of course I do it today. There's no ambiguity about my programme. It is a commentary programme. It's an affront to the mainstream media. What we do is put out the opposite nonsense to what is broadcast, to what is presented by the mainstream media. Ian Dale. A couple of years ago in Brighton, former even Labour spin doctor Damien McBride, nasty bastard, was being interviewed, and a chap tried to stand behind him to protest nuclear technology and nuclear weapons. What's wrong with that? And he was standing at a decent distance anyway, and he was holding a banner up protesting nuclear power weapons. And this beauty, Ian Dale, assaulted him while he was doing it. Have a look. Ian Dale later accepted a police caution for the assault. Nice man, eh? Nice man. I say again, look people in the eye and tell them, when you researched all those books about Maggie, that you never heard anything about paedophilia or child murder or VIP paedophile gangs. I can't prove you did hear anything. And even if you did, maybe I'm wrong to even have a go at you for that, you know. A lot of people heard stuff and a lot of people turn a blind eye to it. Or didn't report what they heard or didn't investigate it or whatever. Anyway, we'll leave that there for now. That's kind of it, really, for episode 11 and season 1 of the Richie Allen TV show. Just a couple of things to tell you about that have pissed me off royally this week. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, I talk to you all the time about privatising things. Look, he's not privatising much. There's not much left to privatise. It's all been gone. But the things that are owned by the public, what's left has been basically broken up and sold off to his pals in big business and in the city. Again this week, he's been accused by people of a fire sale of the Royal Bank of Scotland shares, which cost the taxpayer £1 billion overnight. You remember bailing out the RBS and all that bollocks? And the public would own it then, or own a chunk of it and all of that. They're basically selling the shares, or have done, it's done now, for a third less than the Labour government bought them for back in 2008. This is criminal behaviour. It's criminal behaviour. But he won't be going to prison. Speaking of pissing money away that could be used to help people living in extreme poverty or helping homeless people get back on their feet, speaking of pissing people away, Camilla Batman Gailage. What the fuck is that all about? Now, I really don't know much about this, other than there's a charity called Kids Company. Shitloads of money was pumped into it. We find out that massive amounts of money of that 3 million was actually going to wages, heading £800,000 going on a monthly basis to wages.
Massive wages.
Fucking massive.
Massive wages.
To Camilla. Say it. Batman Gailage. Can you say it?
What, Mrs. Batman and hyphen Gailage?
Batman. She was married to the Batman. That's right.
She was of the Batman Gailage.
Batman Gailage. Oh, you racist bastard, laughing at a foreign surname. It just made me laugh. We're into comics here. And Fab Radio and all that. We love comics, so Batman is funny. Camilla Batman Gailage, she was running this thing. Cameron was told that this was a fucking white elephant. Is that what they call him, Hayden? White elephant, when it's a complete fucking disaster?
If you're being polite, yes.
Yeah.
White elephant.
But apparently he was enamoured by her and they kept pumping the money back. And today, as I record this, they're desperately trying to get the money back anyway. If I blew millions of pounds on something that experts told me was throwing money down a black hole, I would be fucking fired. My radio listeners pay for my programme. Imagine if they found out. Imagine if they found out that I was using that money to go to casinos, to take long holidays, to fuck around while putting out crap-sounding radio programmes. Imagine. They wouldn't have it. That'd be the end of it. But not if you're a senior politician. Look, that's it. That's it for season 1 of the Richie Allen television show, brought to you in association with Beyond Vision Media, BVTV. Fantastic people doing fantastic things. I really mean it. Watch out for these people in the late autumn and the early winter. Go to beyondvision.tv. Is that right, Hayden?
That's the one, yeah.
Beyondvision.tv. Thanks to Marty and Hayden for their help in making these 11 episodes. We will be back on September the 4th. That is, the first episode of season 2 will be on Friday, September the 4th. Until then, thanks very much for watching this. Share it on your social media. Get other people to watch it. It's just my opinion. That's what this is. You don't have to agree with it. Use the comments boxes on the YouTube to say whatever the hell you want about it. We certainly won't delete you. We certainly won't censor you. Again, thanks to Hayden and Marty. Enjoy your summer. I'll see you in very early September. Bye for now.